initially, the licensing regime facilitated people to engage in curtailing the sector. You found one person is a farmer, he is registered as a broker, he is also registered as a miller, he is also registered as a buyer at the Nairobi Coffee Exchange. And therefore, there was an incestuous relationship that undermined farmers. Today, we have straightened that space, and that is why we have better prices of coffee. Same thing with tea and all the other areas. In short, what I can tell you is that we have an import bill, food import bill of about 500 billion Kenyan shillings, $4 billion. Just imagine. Every year, importing sugar, edible oil, maize, wheat, rice. So it is my intention to cut down that import bill by 50% by 2027. We want to reduce it by 250 billion shillings. And we are on course because this year we reduced the imports of maize by 70%. We reduced the imports of sugar by 80%. We are now working on rice and wheat, and then edible oil is the one on the line. So again, we want to transform the agricultural sector so that instead of us importing 500 billion shillings, we should be exporting more. Let me say three final things. You are aware that I did make a commitment on matters to do with health. And I know you know how health operates because now you stay in this country. We've had to change the whole health infrastructure in Kenya. I thought I was going to reform the National Health Insurance Fund. It was not possible to reform it because it was too rigid, and therefore we had to tear it down and build it from scratch. So we went to Parliament, it took a bit of time, but we now have 5 pieces of legislation. From one law, we have now 5 pieces of legislation that undertake our health infrastructure program, moving it from a health infrastructure that was heavily tilted towards those who have jobs and those who have means to a universal health coverage where everybody is on board. As a result, we now have increased, we've done 4 things actually in that sector. Number 1, we have changed the health provision structure. We did register all facilities. We have did an assessment of all the facilities, and we want to sort out 4 issues. We want to set out, number 1, making sure that every Kenyan is registered. As I talk to you, 27.2 million Kenyans are now registered under Social Health Authority, up from 8 million. We now have 3.5 times more Kenyans registered, from 8 million to 27.2 million. It is our intention that in the next 6 months, we should have 30 million Kenyans. We should have actually reached universal, because that does not include dependents and children and others. So, number 1. Number 2 is to change how equipment is delivered to our hospitals. In the past, we used to buy equipment, and because you don't have a big financial outlay, you then end up buying very limited equipment. we've since structured. Now we work with the manufacturers. We don't have to pay for the equipment. We have what we call fee for service. We have equipment delivered to our hospitals, and we only pay when we use that equipment to the manufacturer. That was possible because they looked at our health infrastructure, how we had registered Kenyans and how they were going to get paid, and they were satisfied. I was, for example, in Butere on Thursday. I was Thursday in Butere. There's a small level 4 hospital in Butere, and you had CT scan there, you had all manner of equipment there. Ordinarily, you would never find a CT scan in Butere. If you were lucky, you would find it in the referral hospital in Eldoret or Kakamega. But because of the new framework we have created, it is possible for us to deploy the most sophisticated equipment in every hospital in Kenya. On Monday, Monday was a Tuesday, I was in Nakuru. Again, we were having the latest equipment delivered to the referral hospital in Nakuru. For those of you who follow my social media account, you will see. So we are changing the framework of delivery of health. And finally, is how we deliver health commodities. If you listen to many of the people at home, people normally complain about there is no dawa, kuna dawa. Mwananchi wa kawaida anasema hakuna dawa. So we need to solve that hakuna dawa problem. And we have found the reason how to solve it. We've now given a better framework to KEMSA. We've decided that we deliver health commodities, medicines direct to health centers and dispensaries instead of taking them to stores at the county and all the other places. So we have built a better health infrastructure. It is a commitment that I made, and it is a commitment that I'm very proud that today is becoming a reality. And finally, he's just mentioned to you about education. Right? I saw Omar mention about education here. Education is very important. For those of you who follow events at home, we had 4 different issues with education. We had CBC. Many parents were complaining they were doing homework up to midnight. They were being told to make cars at night. And many other stories. And so we have straightened CBC. Now there is clarity on what happens. Number 2, we had a big shortage of teachers. I can confidently tell you we have hired the largest number of teachers in Kenya's history. By January, we will have hired 100,000 teachers in 3 years. That is ordinarily government hires 100,000 teachers in 20 years. But we've done it in 3 years because I'm a very strong believer that if we want to equalize the fortunes of all our children, from poor or rich families, education must be accessible to everybody. We also have challenges with the classrooms. We sourced money from the World Bank. We work with our own resources, with members of parliament. I must commend them. We built 23,000 new classrooms, and we are on the way building another 1,600 laboratories that will bring children, especially from informal settlements, rural areas that ordinarily would not have access to a laboratory or sufficient classrooms or enough teachers. That is the ecosystem we are sorting. We have also made sure that our universities. For those of you who understand what was the challenge with our universities, we have many universities, Nairobi University, Kenyan University, Egerton University. They were paying lecturers half pay because there wasn't enough money. So we changed the funding model. We now have what we call student-centered funding model that ensures that we assess every student to make sure that no child, especially those from vulnerable backgrounds, miss school. We have since increased scholarships and loans to make sure that children from vulnerable backgrounds get up to 90% loan and scholarship so that we carry them along. So I just thought I should mention some of the things that we are doing back at home. And then finally, let me talk about jobs. I did make a commitment on jobs because we spend 680, in fact, this year, it is 702 billion Kenyan shillings on education. 700 billion shillings on education. It is important that as we spend that amount of money in education, we also think about what happens to the pipeline when these people who are in ECDs, primary, secondary, college, university, when they get out of the pipeline, what happens to them? And that is why we came up with 4 pipelines for how to create jobs. And we wanted to be deliberate. Sometimes there's a conversation about creating jobs, but it is not certain, it is not deliberate. Unless you drill down to detail, you are unlikely to have any impact. And that's the reason why we were thinking, and we rolled out 4 different interventions on matters to do with creating jobs. Number 1 is our housing program. I know many of you, not you, many people in Kenya were asking me, what is wrong with you? Who told you we need houses? But you see, any country that needs to stimulate the economy, they look at public infrastructure that creates, that is labor intensive and uses it, whether it's America, whether it is Europe, that's what they do. And again, for your information, housing was a program that has been there with us. It was there in the Kanu Manifesto, it was there in the NACO Manifesto, it was there in the NASA Manifesto, it was there in the Jubilee Manifesto, it was there in the Asenio Manifesto, it was there in the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto. It is a permanent feature in all the manifestos. But it was difficult to implement because it's not easy. Just for context, my brother, President Uhuru, and I, we had the Big 4 in 2017. And one of the Big 4 was housing. And we did everything because it is the right thing to do, and all of us agree. So when we were elected, we wanted to do housing. I remember very well, we went to Parliament, we passed the law, we created the fund, we created the levy. In fact, President Ruto told me he knew of somebody called Charles Kinga, who was in South Africa, and who was a good expert in these matters of housing. We brought him, we looked for him, we brought him to Kenya, we met him, Principal Secretary for Housing. And then when everything was ready, and we started to collect the levy, and then there was noise. No, this levy, I don't know, these ones are complaining, those ones are complaining, maandamano hapa, nini pale, nini kelele. Then President Ruto called me and told me, William, si wewe uko na nyumba? Nikamwambia ndio, mimi niko na nyumba. Sasa hii kelele hii tunapigiwa ni ya nini? Kama hao watu wakati na nyumba, achana nao. So our housing plan collapsed. But you see, the irony is that that was 2017. Come 2022, housing was in the manifesto of Kenya Kwanza. Mine. Housing was in the manifesto of the opposition, then, as in me, complete with 1.5% levy. Mimi kwa bahati Mungu amenijalia nimeshinda uchaguzi. Housing ndio hiyo iko hapo. Sasa ule Hinga was still PS, so I told him we are not going anywhere. Sasa tufanye kitu this time. Akaniambia hii utawezana na makelele. So the keleles came. I was given new names, Sakayo, I don't know. But I stood my ground. Because it was the right thing to do 40 years ago. It is still the right thing to do now. Because, let me give you an example. I invited the president of Singapore. He came to Kenya in 2023. Singapore was exactly like Kenya. Not even exactly. Singapore was actually a slum like Kibera in 1963. Just imagine. Singapore, if you look at the pictures, and he told me that they actually used force to get people to move from the slums to go and occupy houses on the 10th floor and 15th floor and 30th floor. For Kenya, we didn't have to use force. So he told me housing is something that you must do. It's not easy, but it changes a nation. Just look at the difference. They implemented housing in 1964. Today, Singapore is a first world country. 95% of their population are home owners. The opposite is that in Kenya, we did not implement. We are a third world country. 7 million Kenyans live in slums. Do you see the difference? So, we're implementing housing. In fact, I think my team has some pictures on what we are doing in Kenya. Today, we are building 230,000 units. 230,000 units in every town and townships in Kenya. I mean, if there is one thing that is going to change the destiny of our nation, it's housing. If you go to Mandera, you go to Wajir, you go to Kitui, you go to Mombasa, you go to Nyeri, you go to Murang'a, you go to Eldoret, you go to Kisumu, you go to Siaya, everywhere. I was on Friday, I was in Funyula. Do you know where Funyula is? Unajua mahali Funyula is? Funyula is in Busia. You know? And we have a 10-story affordable housing program in Funyula. We are doing another 14-story in Busia town. We are doing another one in Malawi. And on and on and on and on. just before I show you the clip, what is happening? We are now hiring close to 600,000 people, engineers, architects, quantity surveyors, electricians, plumbers, masons, carpenters, and everybody in between. We have people working in the steel industry, in the cement industry, in our quarries, and everybody in between. By next year, housing will be hiring 1 million people. Decent housing, apart from helping us with reducing on land fragmentation, apart from stimulating our economy, housing is creating opportunities for jobs. And these are only 230,000 units. We have a shortage of 2.5 million housing units, and it is growing. So we will be at this housing for the next 20-25 years before we can stabilize. And you know what? We have built this whole big program. Now the contracts we have signed is 600 billion. How much? 600 billion. Housing, markets, hostels, and all of it is our own money. We haven't borrowed from the World Bank, we have not borrowed from nobody. And for your information, if I were to go and borrow 600 billion shillings from the World Bank, I would live in Washington for 10 years to get it. I would need 10 years of letter writing and begging. But we have mobilized our own domestic resources, and Kenya is changing. The skyline of every town is changing, and we have many people working. You know, so I don't mind the names. I don't mind the names. So long as Kenya gets transformed, I think it's not a problem. Yeah, that's how nations are changed. Nations are not changed by small thinking, you know, being politically correct all the time, you know. You are waiting what will begin a coffee to world. You can never change a nation that way. That is one. Number two, we are expanding our digital footprint. We now have agenda centers, we now have ICT hubs, we have BPOs, business process outsourcing. In fact, Teleperformance, the largest BPO in the world, is now set up camp in Nairobi. Is that correct, Diego? Yeah, at that place in Two Rivers. They've set up a huge facility there. So, and we now have close to 180,000 people working in that ecosystem of digital jobs, because we have streamlined the law around there to make sure it works. That's our second pillar on creating jobs. And we now want to take ICT hubs to every ward in Kenya. Members of Parliament, we have allocated the resources to build an ICT hub in every ward in Kenya, so that we have 200-300 young people working, getting skilled, so that they can work globally. And then number three is what I've just discussed with you, you know, creating a pipeline for Kenyans who want to work abroad, you know, by streamlining visa, making sure that we have a transparent process, signing bilateral labor agreement with different countries, and doing what we must to make sure that we facilitate the diaspora the way we are doing. In the last 3 years, 420,000 Kenyans have joined the diaspora. We now have clear numbers on who is working where, what is their pay, and what is their status. I'm very happy that close to maybe 10,000 of you, between 10 and 15,000 according to Mutua, have joined the diaspora in Qatar in the last 3 years. And we will now scale up because we have removed what were bottlenecks. Our intention is to triple the number of people working in Qatar as we do it elsewhere globally, because we still have opportunities. Wherever we have an opportunity, we will try. And finally, on that aspect, subject of job creation is the whole ecosystem we are building with special economic zones, county aggregation and industrial parks, and the negotiations we are carrying out to open new markets for Kenya. We've just concluded discussions with China to open the Chinese market for Kenyan products. We operationalized the European market. We signed the economic partnership agreement with Europe, 26 countries, last year, June. Now we have a whole European market open to Kenyan products. We have the Africa Continental Free Trade market, and we are engaging the US to extend AGOA and to also negotiate a bilateral agreement between Kenya and the United States. So all these markets are for products from Kenya. Agro-processing, value addition, manufacturing, industrialization, that is the trajectory we are using to create new opportunities for work. So I just thought of, putting this picture to you as citizens of Kenya, so that you know the status of your country and you know where to participate and how to contribute. Finally, before we do this clip, let me conclude by saying that what we have done in the last 3 years is okay, but it's not good enough. It is not good enough. Why do I say so? Kenya is a third world country by mistake. We shouldn't be a third world country. We are not made of third world country stuff. We're supposed to be playing in a different league. Do you understand? Yes. Yes. We can move Kenya from a third world country to a first world country in our lifetime, if we do a couple of things right. And I have put a proposition to us, to the people of Kenya, on how to move from a third world country to a first world country in the next 25 to 30 years. China did it, Korea did it, other countries, Malaysia did it, we can do it. Looking at what we have done, I am very persuaded that we can move this country to a first world country. We need to do 3 things, in my opinion. Number 1, we need to bring under production another 2.5 million acres of land, agricultural land, so that we finish with importing food and we export to the markets we have already negotiated. We need to build at least 50 mega dams, huge dams, High Grand Forks Dam, Soin Core Dam, and we have a list of them, they've been in our books for the last 20 years. We have all of them in our books. But we haven't done it because we haven't thought of how to do it. I have put a proposition on how we can do it. We need 1.5 trillion shillings. That's just about maybe 10, 12 billion dollars. We can raise that money. So to raise here housing, 600 billion. But this one we can raise even without any levy. We'll raise it. Tutatumia tu akili. Tuache ujinga. Unanielewa?
Kama namna gani?
That's what we need to do. And we are going to do it. Not too far from now. I discussed it with the Emir of Qatar today on how we can create that partnership. Because that's number one. Number two, we need to generate energy. We need to generate electricity. As I talk to you, we have 2,300 megawatts. The whole country. How much? 2,300. Tulienda na kimbelembele yetu tukaenda tukanegotiate na Microsoft. Na G42. Tukanegotiate. You know, when I went for the